Well, politics in South Africa today is rather amusing, and a lot of this actually comes against the backdrop of tensions as Cyril Ramaphosa is, well, being subjected to, and obviously US negotiations. But before we get onto the main video of today, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, it really does help. And if you really like the content I make, you're welcome to support me by buying me a coffee. The link is in the description box below. So let's actually get on to Ramaphosa's woes. And the first is actually a continuation of the video I made yesterday, where Ramaphosa basically praised the DA. Now, Ramaphosa told 4,600 ANC councillors that it was either service delivery or death of the ANC, but admitted that DA-run municipalities outperform ANC ones in clean audit and governance. Now, he ordered a 100-day action plan of fixing potholes, collecting refuse on schedule, and fixing water leaks and street lights. He warned that poor municipal performance drives away investors and undermines fiscal sustainability. Now, Gwede Matashe himself also scolded councillors by saying, "You guys sing well, but capacity delulu." Now, councillors were angry at Ramaphosa for praising the DA publicly and accused him of promoting the opposition. Many issued open letters and statements to defend ANC councillors and calling the DA's governance a facade hiding corruption behind clean audits. Now, analysts are calling it Ramaphosa's Damascus moment, which they say could be his political endgame. Now, with the ANC already below 50% nationally, Ramaphosa's remarks could fuel DA campaigns in 2026. And I must say, if I was the DA, I would spray that everywhere. On your posters, put Ramaphosa up and go, the DA is the best. Now, rumors are gaining traction of a December recall of Ramaphosa, with many critics saying that he's undermined the ANC's narrative that it cares for the poor, while the DA only caters for the elite. But you see, the problem is, that's just a narrative. It's a story that you like to say or to communicate to your stooges so that somehow they'll continue to vote for the ANC and be scared of the opposition parties. But it's not the reality. The reality is that the DA does govern better than the ANC. That, unfortunately, is fact. Now, before we go on to the Trump scenario, as you know, the automotive sector in South Africa has suffered significantly thanks to Trump's tariffs on South Africa. But you may be forgiven for thinking that it's only South Africa that is suffering forms of economic downturn when it comes through to vehicle manufacturing. And so just to issue a degree of balance, we're going to say, well, no, that's not actually true. Because in other news, Nissan is downsizing. They are closing design studios in California and Brazil. They're downsizing their operations in London and Japan. And they're consolidating into 5 global hubs, namely Los Angeles, London, Singapore, Tokyo. And part of Nissan's turnaround plan, led by their new CEO, is that they target profitability by cutting global production capacity from 3.5 million vehicles to 2.5 million vehicles and slashing manufacturing plants from 17 to 10 by 2027. Now, Ford also is going to be slashing up to 1,000 jobs at its Cologne EV plant, that's its electrical vehicle plant, and the reason for this is because of weak European demand for electric vehicles, which are currently well below industry forecasts. Now, plants will be shifting to single-shift productions by 2026, so that means that the plants won't create numerous vehicles. Many of the plants will only create one type of vehicle. Like in South Africa, our big vehicle is the Ranger. In any case, this just adds to Ford's wider restructuring which will be affecting thousands of jobs. So what you can see is that both Nissan and Ford are struggling with overcapacity, sluggish EV adoption, and harsh restructuring. And all of this means that there will be massive job cuts globally for these companies. So before you look at the South African situation, where we've lost some jobs here too, to Ford and so forth, yeah, it's a global issue. It's not just an issue affecting us. Now, in other news that's really causing Cyril Ramaphosa a headache, well, as you would have seen from my video yesterday, the Pala mystery is suddenly reoccurring in the psyche of everybody, and that is because the thief is currently on trial for the theft of the money. Now, the Hawks have revealed that the couch, the infamous couch, the cash couch, where the 580,000 US dollars, the 10 million rand at Ramaphosa's farm was hidden, well, that couch has apparently vanished before investigators arrived. And you're going to have to love the news. The news of this is just like, it's amazing. It's just phenomenal. Because staff claim that it was sent for reupholstering, fueling suspicion of evidence tampering. Yes, so the infamous cash couch, when the investigators arrived to investigate it, was being reupholstered. You can't make this shit up. Now, the trial of burglars is currently underway, but there are unanswered questions which are lingering about the undeclared cash, the cover-ups, and the accountability. Because, as you'll know, SARS and all of the ANC recused their president and said, we have reviewed ourselves and we found ourselves innocent. In a case to other news, you may recall that there was the Stellenbosch racism scandal where the HR boss was caught on video saying that white employees' lives should be made difficult until they resign. Now, that HR manager, Alexander Kanamea, claims that the outrage is a witch hunt designed to derail corruption probes that he is conducting against senior officials. And whilst he faces suspension amid mounting public outcry and political pressure, he says it wasn't him. So the guy was literally caught on camera being openly racist and hostile to white individuals, but it's everybody else's fault, right? I mean, this is just the way these individuals run. Now, in other news, one more news article before we get on to the main crux of the article today, and that is that the US Congressman Brian Mast has introduced a bill blocking any form of IMF or World Bank funding for Zimbabwe. So his condition is that if Zimbabwe wants to get these loans, which they desperately need at the moment, that Zimbabwe must first repay 3.5 billion US in forms of compensation to white farmers displaced by land seizures. Now, the farmers reject the latest plan by Zimbabwe to pay their money back via treasury bonds, because ultimately, if the government's useless and you can't really trust on their cash, then what good is a treasury bond? That's like me saying, I'm going to pay you in trust me bros from the ANC. I mean, in forms of reality, how many of you would actually accept a trust me bro from the ANC? In any case, the actual bill will further isolate Zimbabwe from the international capital markets. And this in itself becomes really problematic because what it may do is force Zimbabwe to trade with countries such as China or Russia, although those countries are very unlikely to give to Zimbabwe the kind of money it needs to, regenerate its economy. Now, one final article before we get on to the news of sanctions, let's actually look at load shedding, because for those of you who haven't noticed, we actually haven't had any. We haven't had any for some time. Now, the former Eskom CEO, Andre de Ruyter, has come out and said why we haven't actually had any load shedding. And according to him, there were 3 short-term fixes which basically fixed the load shedding crisis. The first was the return of big coal or nuclear units, a massive private solar boom with 6.1 gigawatts added in just 18 months, and Eskom's allowed record diesel burning, where we're burning up to 23 to 24 billion rands worth of diesel, which is also what's been budgeted for, which is up from the previous budget of like 5 billion rand. So basically, we have electricity because we're burning diesel at a record rate. Now, Andre de Ruyter warns that diesel reliance is unsustainable at 6 rand per kilowatt. He's saying that this is ultimately going to drive up the cost of electricity because diesel itself is not an efficient way to power a country. And he argues that private sector markets will ultimately be the ones who solve the state's problem and not the state itself. So he's suggesting that really Eskom may be gone for now, but it's all built on expensive diesel costs to run the turbines and the public's mass adoption of solar. So he says that what we really need in order to have proper progress in the country is private sector involvement, and this is the only way to have true reform in the country. So ladies and gentlemen, we don't have load shedding at the moment, but according to de Ruyter, we will when the money runs out. So let's move on to the final story of today. And this is the story of what's now being called the Kennedy's Senate bill, because Senator John Kennedy, who is hardly a lightweight, has introduced Bill S2752, which is called the US-South Africa Bilateral Relations Review Act. Now, if you've already heard that name before, well, there's a reason for that, because this is a companion bill to the bill submitted by the Republican Ronnie Jackson. So there are now two bills that call for bilateral relations review. Now, the key measures in this bill is that they're calling for a comprehensive review of South Africa-US relations and certification on whether South Africa continues to undermine US security. There is a classified list of ANC officials eligible for global Magnitsky sanctions and a clause to end South Africa's eligibility for the African Growth and Opportunity Act, also known as AGOA. Now, according to the act submitted by John Kennedy, the reasons for sanctions against ANC officials is because South Africa is accused of hosting Hamas leaders and glorifying anti-Israel terrorists. Well, kind of true. Also because of the blaming of Israel for the October 7th attacks. Also true. Now, the threatening of the Israeli South Africans serving in the RDF, this is the allusion to the fact that the ANC says that there are South Africans that have moved to Israel, and if they come back to South Africa and they've served in the RDF, the ANC says that they will arrest them. And he also says that the aligning with US adversaries, such as the hosting of the Russia-China naval drills, which, as you know, we were going to host another one during the G20 summit. Why we're going to do that, I don't know. And also the allowing of the sanctioned Russian ships to dock, well, that's the Lady R. Also the deep ties to China's Belt and Road Initiative. And the bill itself identifies the ANC itself as the problem, not just factions within the ANC, but all of the ANC. Now, the Republicans hold a congressional majority, which boosts the chance that these acts will actually be passed. Now, AGOA is currently a misdemeanor anyway because of Trump's tariffs, so we can discount that. But all of this comes after Ramaphosa's disastrous US visit where he clashed with Trump over white farmer genocide claims. But in other news, Cyril Ramaphosa is due to travel to the US this month to attend the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Now, during this visit, Ramaphosa is scheduled to meet with various US leaders, although there is no confirmed meeting with US President Donald Trump on Ramaphosa's public itinerary. Now, the absence of a meeting with Trump is being noticed because often high-profile state or diplomatic visits include such engagements, so it does look like Trump is just, well, ignoring Ramaphosa. And this could suggest that diplomatic priorities or sensitivities in Ramaphosa's visit, either that the meeting wasn't arranged or that it is being handled behind scenes. This situation might affect perceptions of South Africa's relations with the current US administration, and questions remain around the current trade negotiations occurring between the South African delegation and the United States. Without the involvement of the two presidents, many are questioning whether a trade deal is ever actually going to happen. In any case, that's the news of today. Do let me know what you think of all of this in the comment section below. Until next time, bye.